Yeah, my phone is on mute, like it always is.
Excellent. Well, hi everybody.
Is that mute life? Hello!
Hey!
Living our best mute life over here.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
James from Crumbling Keep, and I am here with Dungeon Maxter and Just the Dix to talk about some interesting encounters today.
Yo, I am not James Crane. How do you feel about that?
Like, only slightly disappointed.
It's okay. We can fuse and become one slowly over the course of this conversation, and I'll accept no other fate for us, frankly.
And in true clickbait fashion, just wait until we give you these 5 tips for making your encounters more interesting. Just wait till you see number 5. Spoiler,
Just you wait.
we're fusing.
We may get banned from Facebook.
I mean, it's a good day for it, I guess, huh?
Hey.
So before we get into the meat of all these interesting encounters, Max, Dix, tell us about Help Action and why it's the best podcast that you should be listening to.
Dix, do you want to fire away on this one?
So Help Action is a DM's advice podcast that Max and I are both co-hosts of, with 2 other DMs. And we basically spend about an hour and a half talking about different things D&D. We introduce you guys to new products and things that are about to come out, as well as we go over stories of games that we run and things like that. And then we answer questions submitted by viewers, listeners, people that we interact with.
We also plumb the darkest goddamn depths of the internet to try to find... You could classify them as questions. They certainly have question marks in them for the most part,
true.
but it's I would say it's less structured question and more like quiet, disheveled musing of some poor motherfucker in the back of a cave. Something that should never be brought to light, but you know what? That's what we're here for.
Bring it to light.
Yeah.
All of you know about it.
We dredge it up from the basement to air out other people's dirty dungeon laundry.
You know, if you've ever read some Lovecraft, a point in a book where they get to the eldritch horror that man was not meant to see, that's kind of like the questions you get on the Help Action podcast. Yeah.
Think about that every day when I look in the mirror.
Okay, so one last thing before we get into the counters. What was one of the favorite questions you've ever answered?
Oh,
Mine's easy.
Oh, yeah?
My favorite question I have ever answered, I brought this to the podcast, a very long time ago. And the context makes less sense than the question itself. Somebody was desperately looking for help, and they asked, I quote, "I got 4 wolves, now what?"
Yeah, that was a real question.
Oh, that's legitimate. Yeah,
All
what?
4 of them.
What next?
You certainly got them wolves, my dude.
Oh, that's good.
That one, right? It warmed my fucking heart.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Oh. Mine's not as like extravagant as that.
I'm sorry I went so hard.
Mine's a favorite because it ended up becoming a staple question that we ask all of our guests. Which I actually ended up asking this as a question when we were doing like our test sessions before we actually started releasing episodes, and we liked it so much that we brought it back.
So good.
And the question is, what would a troll who has just found a headband of intellect do with his newfound power, his newfound knowledge?
That was a really good one. I appreciate that one as well.
I like that after we asked that question and after we got into that habit, that character was just in Descent into Avernus, except it was an ogre, not a troll. But
I totally made it a troll.
It's still this. Yeah, you gotta. It's the same idea, and I felt validated. Like Spider-Man, I am vindicated.
So we're not exactly saying that Descent into Avernus ripped you off, but we're not saying that. It's kind of what I'm getting from this, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, okay. It's like what, convergent evolution? We just did the same things at the same time. you know? That's what that is, right? I got that
needed
term
it,
correct.
and so it spawned where it needed to.
Yeah.
The exact cultural conditions were met for this to spawn in multiple places. It's like alcohol in the real world. I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Or like some sort of very helpful tumor.
Yeah.
There's a need for it somewhere, so eventually they get there.
So on that note, look at the viewer count just go down. No, let's talk about...
Have we alienated everyone yet?
No, there's someone still here. I don't know why. Let's talk about interesting encounters. So I'm sure everyone has experiences at some point in time where the D&D slog of, okay, roll initiative, fight these monsters, roll to hit, roll for damage, repeat. Are you out of spell slots? Great. Now it's really just going to be a like knockdown, drag out, dice rolling fest. We'll wake you up when it's your turn, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd like to start by saying, like, I think those encounters totally have a place in the game, right? Like, not every encounter can be, like, a memorable one. Like, you need something to compare the rest to, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
absolutely.
yeah, right? But getting away
Sometimes
from
you
that...
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Max.
Oh, sometimes you just gotta show up and fucking duke all over a bunch of bugbears to remember that you're a cool guy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And, you know, take that metaphor as far as you want in life, really. Sometimes you just gotta show up and duke on a bunch of bugbears.
Yeah.
But let's talk about ways where we can spice these encounters up. Things we can change up, things that we can do to detract from that formula of lather, rinse, repeat, roll, damage, initiative, etc.
So I got...
I was just going to say, would you like to start? So go for it.
I got, I guess, 3 kind of points to touch on that. And they're basically like what more interesting encounters should look like at different like tiers of the game. You know,
that's
so like
good.
low tier, mid tier, high tier. 4, just join me on this fucking thought journey. Climb this idiot cliff with me. I count low tier adventures as levels 1 to 8. Mid tier is like 9 to I don't know, like 14-ish, and then high tier is 15 to 20.
Okay.
So you got these spaces where challenges are shaped dramatically. So at like low tier, should I punch my mic more often? Did that come through? At like low tier encounters, one of the best things you can do, and one of the best things that is maybe not taken advantage as much as it should be, is interesting terrain features and things like on the map in the encounter you can interact with. A cool one from back in the day with this, I'm not sure if this started in 3rd or 4th edition. 4th, before we get into contentious things, I loved 4th edition. It was fucking great. It was awesome. You just needed a creative DM to not make it feel like a World of Warcraft clone, because it wasn't.
I'd play 4th with you.
Thank you. I make it fucking I make that shit rock. Not to pull on my own dick too much, but
that's point 6. Stay tuned, everybody.
That is point 6. Watch as that hold on. 4th edition had a lot of cool like hazards in it, which were like environmental traps almost, you know? And one they had was I think it was called like a blood rock or something like that. It was some big stone that if you were standing on it, your crit range doubled. If you were undead and standing on it, your crit range doubled, and you like regained health every turn.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Right. So just this one little feature that like an enemy can use at first, and then the players can be like, maybe we should go that direction, and it changes the tactics of things and becomes more interesting. At mid tier, keep that interesting terrain in there, and you can start introducing like enemy combinations. So enemies that play off of each other in more interesting ways, things that amplify other things' damage, things that fuck with the terrain in interesting ways, things that either hinder you or buff their allies or something. More interesting tactical positioning, like that's more fun. And then at high tier, shit kind of goes out the window Because even if you give them an arena with 9 giants in it, everybody's going to be flying or like digging through the earth or grabbing the audience and tossing them at people. So at high tier, I have noticed that you can present the plainest battlefield in the fucking world, and the players have the tools to make that encounter interesting in their terms, which is pretty fucking cool.
That's an awesome take on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely...
That's been my experience so far.
I like the idea of, terrain. Interesting terrain is definitely... It can go farther than just, this costs double movement to pass over, for sure.
Oh no, blackberry vines!
Yeah, I think on that same... somewhat on that same line, having things on the battlefield you can interact with. Then again, it'll scale as you get higher up in level, and so it won't matter as much. But if you have something like a ballista on the field that someone can get to and start shooting, if you ever have a ship encounter, just don't say anything, just put a ballista on the side of it, and someone is going for that ballista, Yeah. And they're going to feel real cool when they shoot that thing.
Put a pair of fucking swivel guns up near the fucking boat steering wheel. Steer. There's a name for it, right?
Yeah, it's boat steering wheel. That's the nautical term.
Well, fuck me. All right. Put a couple swivel guns up there, and all of a sudden people are going to need to get to those. It's going to be really interesting.
Or, some rocks that are ready to tumble, all you have to do is hit the stick holding them up or something like that, unsprung traps or whatnot. And you can require some checks to spot these things or whatnot. You can just tell players outright. But yeah, I think having those interactables on the battlefield that aren't necessarily combatants is a great thing to have. And not the helm. Not the helm, Aaliyah. It's a boat steering wheel. I'm sorry. Thank you for joining our stream, but actually it's really nice to see you and congratulations.
I can't see the chat. Where's the chat?
It's on Facebook.
Oh God. Mute. I can hear my own voice. I made a mistake.
So on that same kind of vein, having the interesting just items and things like that people can interact with on the battlefield, it's also kind of fun too to give your players the opportunity to set up that battlefield on their own. Like if they know there's somebody coming for them and they maybe have the chance to set up an ambush, and let them set up those items so that they can draw people into places that they don't know that they're just walking into traps. Can also add that kind of extra element into things like that.
Oh yeah, that is super legitimate. I once had, and I know both of you know James Sinclair. I was
James Sinclair
playing in a game he was running, and this is Cole. Sorry. This was in a game he was running, and I was a player in, and I will never forget. This is one of my top 10 D&D moments of all time. We were in a town, and there was the bad guys were coming on a ship, bunch of undead, and we had time to set up a bunch of barricades and whatnot before they got there. And so he went, set up this, he has the big Chessex battle map. So he drew out the whole town on there, gave us a bunch of cutout terrain to place around. And so we spent hours just figuring out okay, we're going to put a pile of crates here. And then if this doesn't hold, we're going to fall back to here. And we got this all set up. And it took pretty much the rest of that session. And the next week we come to play and we're all excited because we're oh yeah, we have this super awesome battleground set up. And he's describing how the ship is riding on this giant wave up above the ocean, and how the wave crashes over everything we just did and washes it away.
Oh, no.
You know what? I was gonna say the James Sinclair move is to just bring in flying enemies at that point. You were right on it.
To be fair, we found out later that one of his kiddos actually messed up the table, and that was the reasoning this happened. It wasn't just malice, but at the time it was so funny because we spent so long setting it up, and he's just Boof! It's all gone. Have fun fighting the zombies. You know.
I had a similar thing happen a very long time ago when I spent like 3 hours drawing out these like intricate jungle ruins with all these bridges between them and foliage and a river nearby and shit like that. And we sat down to play, and like 2 turns into the combat encounter, one of the players adjusted and just spilled a huge glass of water all over it. And I was so mad, but I couldn't be mad at him because it was an accident. And I feel that pain of having to readjust suddenly on the fly because somebody shit all over all your plans. That is what I mean to say.
That is painful. That is pure pain.
Yeah. It aches.
So ultimately, our biggest takeaway for this is if you want to set up a dynamic battlefield and spruce up those encounters, don't, because it will fail in the end and you'll be sad. Daniel Quasar, happy birthday!
What a happy birthday, old DQ. I don't know who you are, Daniel Quasar, but happy.
Me neither, but happy birthday.
Also, hi Cole, and hi everybody else watching.
Hello.
It's lovely for you all to be. I understand. The internet is telling me that there are 9 people here, and I don't know who they all are, but fucking party on, my guys.
Sean is one of my favorite Crumbling Keep fans of all time.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So
touching on the point of. Ooh. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, totally. Like you did just freeze a little. I think you're unfreezing now. I think we're back.
Seem good to me now.
Sweet, fantastic. Welcome to my shitty internet. I am also banned from having cups at tables, especially at fucking orcs, where I was 100% banned from that. Yeah, right? I like to move around a lot when I DM, so I gestured wildly and fucking knocked glass off of a table and it shattered everywhere. So the folks at game night, rest in peace game night, I fucking love you, made me a sippy cup from just tools behind the bar.
That's excellent.
That's great.
It was my DMing cup. I was pushed to the kids' table.
DMing at the kids' table
Whitney.
with Max Hobbs.
Yeah, right. Oh my god, my whole life. So terrain and consequence and things like that are really fun at low levels, and you could definitely do that. But I also like to add like a complicated social potential interaction to a lot of combats, especially if you're dealing with other like intelligent humanoid things. So like
tell me more on this.
You could do something like try to bargain with some of them to turn on the rest of them, or it's something like that, or
so if I can break in just a sec on that one is
fire away, dude.
One of my favorite ways to set up an encounter, for those of you that have been following Crumbling Keep, you know we publish a lot of random encounter type things, and one of my favorite things to play with is you come upon 2 monsters or potential enemies already fighting each other, and figure it out. What do? Do you just watch from afar? Do you join one side of them, or even if they're not in active combatants, just having like 2 factions ready to blow and having the PCs being the potential powder keg is like, I return to it over and over again. So I really like that one.
Absolutely. Or some sort of like, I did something like this with a group very recently, some sort of complicated wrinkle where after killing some of the enemies, they realized that like killing the enemies is maybe not the best solution here, and they may or may not just be like harming unwilling participants in some sort of larger scenario. That was fun. I had some people that were like dominated by these plants, and the party eventually realized there were vines in people's like backs and legs and shit. And when they cut the vines, the people they were fighting had these like weird realizations of not knowing where they were and freaking out. And then the group was like, what the fuck did we just do?
Oh no.
It was great. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So having some like personal consequence makes it could be something as simple as like let's go back to the Dookie bugbears again. There is a like baby in the middle of them, so you have to be careful about how you fight them because they have a tiny, precious, delicate little thing, and you might break it, and that will just ruin the point of having the encounter. So having a goal in the encounter that's not just kill everything makes it a lot more fun too.
Yeah, that's one of my top ones is change the win condition. And I think I learned a lot from like playing things like Warhammer and whatnot, where the goal in army clashes isn't necessarily like wipe out the other army. It might be get to this place, hold it for this many rounds, or get this item back to your side first, or something along those lines. So it's possible to like set up encounters that the players wouldn't win in the long game, right? Like there's just too many monsters or whatnot. And one of my favorite ways to do this to kind of this is really pertinent because I was just rewatching the Two Towers last night, and the fifth day look to the east, to kind of get that sense of tension. And maybe not even tell them what's going on, but like just set up the encounter where it's like overwhelming. They're trying to hold a place, and just put a countdown dice on the table, and each round just count it down once. And they don't need to know that means the cavalry's coming and it's going to save their asses. But it changes what the goal is, and sometimes it's worth letting them know ahead of time, like, hey, cavalry's coming, because then that's going to change their tactics and whatnot and how they're thinking about it. But yeah, it could be something like that. It could be something like, okay, here's this battle map. This is the thing both sides want in the middle. Let's see who's going to get it out of there first. So yeah, just playing around with what that win condition can be. It doesn't always have to be exterminate all the enemy.
Absolutely. So you're saying that the way to make any encounter interesting is by adding a Gandalf?
I think you mean... I like to go with Mandolf, actually. Ooh. A lot more muscles, but Mandolf. Just as much gray beard.
Just like giant, swole-ass Ian McKellen fucking punching orcs off of the wall.
Okay, tell me that's not going to make any encounter better. Tell me that's not going to make anything better. Like that's
Mandolf the Muscle Wizard.
I'm saying.
Yeah. Look, I do not disagree with you even a little bit. I think every Dungeons and Dragons game has been all the poorer for not including that in pretty much every encounter. It's just how it is.
First level goblin encounter, Mandolf the Wizard.
Mandolf
fighting an ancient dragon, Mandolf the Wizard. Going to visit your family for the holidays, Mandolf the fucking Wizard.
Yeah, and Mandolf, he has his own goals, his own needs, and shit like that. He might come in and fucking, turn goblins to pudding with his giant burly ass feet, and then he'll come into the ancient red dragon and whisper sweet nothings to it and peck it on the beak and then fuck right off to deal with somebody else.
And I hope you're all taking notes because these tips are gold.
Mandolf is a force of fucking nature.
To also play off of
stat block we gotta make now.
Oh yeah, right. This is like the ancient goose dragon all over again. Now we need Mandolf the Wizard.
There you go. Yeah. Can be one of the fucking like Theros mythic encounters. He changes halfway through and just gets beefier. His muscles grow muscles.
Each muscle is another little Mandolf that sprouts off of it.
Yeah. He starts budding smaller, equally as beefy wizards.
So going back to the whole like social aspect and having like changing the win condition of the combat or the scenario, I also like combat like encounters where they have one goal in mind and then suddenly maybe something happens in the middle of that encounter and their goal is changed.
Ooh,
hell yeah.
Perhaps they're like in combat with a group of NPCs that they don't realize are undercover agents for a faction they work for, or for a guild that they're particularly against and aren't supposed to kill. And now it's like, oh shit, we've been set up, we have to leave, or now we have to like, do we go and finish the job and do the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that's good.
they have to consider their specific role in the encounter and not just how much damage they deal every turn.
And not just the encounter, the world.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I haven't done a fun shifting goalpost encounter like that in a while. That's something I should probably bring back in a big way, huh?
All of our players are going to be so lucky this coming week.
Right?
They won't regret this at all!
One of my favorite scenarios I ever ran involved you had your big bad, had kidnapped one of the PC's family members and was requiring this terribly dangerous artifact that they had in payment. And, it just gave that moral conundrum of, like, and I thought pretty hard ahead of time. It's like, okay, these are the precautions this guy's going to take. Here's how he's going to set up the meeting ground and everything. So in case they did think of a way to get around all that, they'd be able to outsmart him. But that said, it came down to that kind of moral of, like, do we give him the thing and save the family member? Or do we let this, like, NPC we're all connected to die? And that was a little pre-combat. It was on that borderline of this could turn into a combat encounter at any time, but it just gave another consideration. And also, it kind of goes back to that, like, changing what your win condition is. It wasn't necessarily they needed to defeat him. Like, then they had to decide what their win condition would have been, right? Would it have been to save said relative or save said item or some other thing? But it was definitely not as straightforward as kill bad guy, get XP, profit. Yeah. The fucking murder hobo mantra. Right.
Get paid.
Yeah, it's nice to see those moments when the murder hobos start to, like, struggle with the, like, oh wait, this isn't, I can't just
this isn't the Dungeons and Dragons I'm used to.
I know, those moments of, like, struggle, like ethical struggle, are what make games.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, they're tough at the time for the players. I mean, they're supposed to be, but that's like, you talk about those things for years later. You don't talk about the 1d6 goblins you killed and got 1d8 gold pieces from.
Yeah.
So I've got a specific type of combat encounter that I've seen a lot of questions asked about. I've seen a lot of people struggle with in the past. I've seen just a lot of people talk about this. How do you guys handle massive combat encounters and make them not just a fucking slog?
Well, it depends is my first answer. Which this also kind of is another tie-in from a way you can change up your encounters, and that's give your players allies that they're controlling. Mm-hmm. So suddenly it's not just their characters against other characters, and they get kind of attached to nameless foot soldier number one, But that said, I either, like, sometimes I just move into a different system altogether. Name of the company is
James.
Yeah.
James. How much fucking jank hammer have you had fucking players do in fucking Dungeons and Dragons? Just the stripped down, cheapest, most direct version of Warhammer Massive Combat as possible.
The answer is definitely some. So, we when last I guested on Help Action, we talked just a smidgen about 2E and my roots back then. They published a book called Battle Systems, which was made for mass combat. And it was like I didn't know it at the time because I hadn't actually played Warhammer at that time, but it was definitely how do we combine Warhammer with D&D? And it did an okay job of it, but that's a large time, like, I'll do that a lot of, like, I mean, I think, okay, sorry, I'm going a lot of different ways here. Number one, I might use a different system, and part of that might be Strongholds and Followers that Matt Coville's company made.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the MCR, maybe? Anyway.
My Chemical Romance?
Yes, My Chemical Romance. I'm trying to remember Matt Coville's company's name, and I cannot.
The Dungeons and Dragons book that Gerard Way wrote
Yeah,
Real talk though, if Gerard Way wrote a D&D book, I would 100% go out of my way to get my hands on it, because that would be fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's kind of stopped me mid-sentence. I was going to make a joke about me not remembering, and then I just stopped like, wait, no, I want that. I want that.
I need that right now. I'm not okay. Give me a D&D book.
Oh, God.
But a short and simple way to do it, and it's like either way, you're kind of like, you're playing a different game at this point, right? You're getting into like a tactical miniature situation, which is fine if the players are into that. Some players like are gonna super dig it. But figure out who's controlling what, like what player is controlling what allies. Have them all go on the same initiative count, so you're not keeping track of 20 different initiatives. And to use like a stolen again from war games, when it gets to, okay, well, I have this block of 10 guards, move one guard, because you know the movement rate, and then move the rest of them to go next to them, roll all those combat dice at once. And what I do at that point is just like roll all the combat dice to see if they hit, use the average damage done that's listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and for each hit, just multiply that by the damage done, and then don't even think of it as different hits. Like, just kind of take that all off of one creature, and if there's more damage left over, take it off the next creature and whatnot, until your damage plays out and you only have one creature that has half health. So that's actually something I've been playing with in one of my current games in Theros, so that when they're leading a group of sailors from the ship, there's a way to do it. So funny you should ask that. Haha.
Hilarious. Comedic gold. I had an encounter I did a while back. God, this is Cole, who is watching now, or I think is still watching, was part of this encounter where there was like the town they were living in was being attacked, and there were like different sections of wall, and everybody had 2 characters they were running and at least 1 squad of people in the fucking like combat itself. So I had everybody pick like what part of the walls their characters were on. They could like place the type of unit they were in charge of. Were they in charge of the fucking like shield bearing like defenders? Were they in charge of the pikemen? Were they in charge of the archers? Were they in charge of the siege machinery? And everybody got to like place that and fucking put it around. And then as combat was going, more and more of these enemy troops were coming, which were, they were oozes, which was a crazy fucking weird thing to have at a siege.
You're absolutely right.
Right, awesome. Right? Just this like wiggling multicolored carpet coming toward them. And for the majority of the combat, their like personal characters were, they would be doing a little bit, but their job was mostly to help the like blocks of troops and shit like that. Our bard took the mortars that were behind the walls, and every turn of hers, she would cast Minor Illusion to create essentially like a battleship board to tell them where to target, which was pretty cool.
Fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then near the end of the encounter, the thing they were waiting for showed up, which was a guy by the name of the Pudding King, and I have been requested to do the voice here in the chat. I'm sorry for what you're about to hear. He was huge, and he said things like, "You will all fall before me," and shit like that, like, "Oh, the Pudding King." It's the worst voice. I love him. His voice was unbearable.
When I cut this video apart and make promos for it, this is going to be my bumper right here. This is what people are going to see. Not going to explain what the video's about. That's what's going to bring them in.
Welcome to a helpful guide on making combat encounters more interesting. So the Pudding King was basically like a giant Gundam made of ooze, whose head was a throne with a gnome half melted into it. That was the Pudding King himself. So then the characters had something to do to go fight the like big dude, while the like troops on the ground were taking care of the sort of rank and file oozes. That's a weird sentence to say.
That is
hey, Ethan.
actually, like, that's a really good point and a really good thing to bring up. Like, when it comes to mass combat, is you can have the big combat of the army and then have the small combat of what the PCs are actually doing, which can be very different than fighting the rank and file outside.
Yes, and you can even like translate that into a smaller scope encounter by having some sort of like larger or more complex like problem opponent, and then have your other characters have to like break off and clean up the like smaller ones that support it in some way. That's hard to parse without more of a visual to it.
Next time we need to bring the flip charts, but
yeah. Where's our fucking Miro board that I can draw on? Somebody bring that shit up right now.
So I would like to talk about adding in different skill checks to combat. And I think there's a variety of ways you can do that as well. And I think we hit on some of them roundaboutish of, adding in the social encounters in the midst of skill checks or in the midst of combat and things like that. I think some really obvious ones go back to just talking about that terrain. Is there perhaps a sheer wall between the players and the enemies that they have to climb? Maybe they need to throw some athletics checks in there to get up there. If we go back to some of those interactable objects, they might involve maybe they need to unlock a door before they get squashed by monsters. So there might be some like dexterity thieves tools checks on a door. Another one I played in, I didn't come up with this one myself. This is actually another James Sinclair one. Was there would be some kind of like totem on the board that was creating magical effects throughout the battlefield, be it like heavy fog you couldn't see through, or like life-sapping things. And it would take the arcane casters making arcana checks to try and spending spell slots to try and deactivate them. So I think there's something there too of what challenges are in the combat that aren't hitting things.
So, kind of going back to the last subject with the mass combat, I ran a small like miniature campaign a while ago where I was running a team of players that were all evil drow, and they made an excursion into the abyss to basically find Lolth's castle in the Demon Web pits. And so I ran this massive combat where there was this incursion of demons trying to take over like Lolth's part of the abyss. And so they find this pit with Lolth's castle and this massive combat of demons and drow all fighting each other, driders and all that stuff. And so the way I handled that massive combat is that I had the group doing their own like little battle while combat raged around them with their allies and enemies all tangled together. And then something would happen where they would have to leave that area and like move somewhere else. So now they're fighting as they run while trying to survive the combat around them. So they had like almost like a chase sequence where they were having to make checks to run also while making attacks and avoiding like a Garistro running in front of their path that like they have to make dex checks to avoid being trampled.
Oh yeah.
Or like at one point they reach Wolf's castle and they have to climb up one of the spider legs that holds her castle up while it's moving. So they're making strength checks to hold on while they're making dex checks to climb, and there's a Garistro slamming into the bottom trying to knock them off of it. So it's a lot of moving parts, but a lot of different kinds of things that aren't just fighting.
Oh, I love that though.
Totally.
I love that. When it comes to like chase scenes and things of that ilk in D&D, I throw the regular rules out the window because I think the way you're doing it is much more interesting. Like, okay, there's going to be a series of things that happen along this chase. And think of any chase you've seen in like any movie. There's a fruit stand. It's getting knocked over. Jump over the kumquats. Like it's happening, right? Here comes the big pain.
Of all the path blocking fruit that you could pick, out of all the sizes of edible things you went for, James, you went for fucking kumquats?
It's not that they're a danger, it's just you don't want to smash those. You want to come back and eat them. Like if it's like a friggin' apple, whatever. Make some sauce.
I guess if you got like wounds on your feet, you don't wanna step on the citrus, but I'm baffled here.
And tune in for our bonus content after the show. The effects of different fruit stand fruit on your adventuring party. And of course, after that comes the big pane of glass being carried across the road as well, right? But yeah, I think what you did there is a lot more interesting than the standard chase rules by far.
So I'm gonna fold something back into that really quick on a topic that I brought up earlier too. Back in the previous edition, back in 4th edition, there were skill challenges, which were another super interesting type of encounter you could have that wasn't just fucking punching something.
Yeah.
But folding a combat encounter and a skill challenge together, where like each skill check they make during the combat to interact or overcome something either makes their situation easier or more difficult. Where they could achieve like multiple goals simultaneously there with either skills or combat or both. Could make a chase like that a lot of fun, could make any sort of like complicated encounter a lot of fun and a lot to interact with for your players. Give them a lot of options to do on every turn. Something that would be and when it comes to to skills and combat encounters and things like that, again, breaking it down into categories, which is just I find the easier way to think about things. You can have like physical challenges they need to overcome, so things like athletics and acrobatics. Do they need to balance across this beam? Do they need to like stop this boulder from rolling down so their party can get through and then let go so it'll take the enemies out?
That's good. That's fun.
Something like that. Yeah. Is it like a fucking Arcana check to notice as they're fighting that like this fucking tree over here is an illusion and there's a like archer hiding in it that's making things difficult that they need to go address and figure out, maybe dispel or something? Is there like with the right sort of history checks, can they learn what the average tactics of this type of monster is so they can adjust for that as they're fighting them? Have I used the word tactics enough?
You're getting close. I'm keeping a counter here, and it's not quite full.
I'm fucking trying. And then there's the like emotional sort of checks, like is there an ally or somebody that needs to have their morale adjusted? Do you need to like gently encourage somebody into doing better and like not bolting from the battlefield? Do you need to like make a fucking like hard example of somebody to motivate other people? And how do you balance something like that while you are also trying to bury your axe as deep into a fucking gorgon as possible before everybody turns into stone? Nobody talks about gorgons enough.
It's true. There's not enough gorgon love. I like things in adventures and also definitely encounters in general that add a kind of ticking clock feel. Something that makes players feel like they don't have enough time. And going back to like my countdown before allies arrive earlier, that's certainly one way of doing it. Okay, so I played very little 4E. So
I'm so sorry. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
People shit on it. It's great.
Like, I really wouldn't mind trying it more. Like, so I started at 2nd, I played no 3rd, and I came back during 4th. So 3rd's like a mystery to me. I'm going to say something spicy here that some people might agree with. Not playing 3rd edition, you really didn't fucking miss much, man. You know, out of all the editions, I feel like it's the least one that I feel the need to go back and own any of. And no offense to it. And I think especially looking at, from what I know about 3rd, looking at things like 3rd feels like a stepping stone that brought us things like Pathfinder and eventually 5th.
Did it bring us things like Pathfinder, or is Pathfinder just a carbon copy?
How about 2E? It brought us Pathfinder 2E. That's different enough, right? Where was I going with all that? Oh, right. So my point was I don't necessarily know what skill challenges are, so what I'm describing might be a ripoff of skill challenges without me knowing, and if so, I apologize to everyone, ever.
After you go through this, I'll be happy to tell you what they are because it's super simple and it's really fun.
Awesome. I'm kind of looking forward to that because I feel like this is like akin to it, if not exactly it. But the idea is like if you have... Okay, so one of my most recent examples in Plug Time in Ket that we're releasing on our Patreon, there is an obelisk in the middle of the desert that has many different runes on it, and the players can interpret it, but it's going to take time. And the way I modeled that is that there's tiers, right? I can't remember off the top of my head what skill I used. I think it's history. You make history checks, and you add all of your history checks together. Now, every time you roll a history check, you roll dice to see if this old-ass obelisk crumbles to dust, and that's all the information you get. But as you cross each tier, like let's say the first tier is 25. So when you make enough history checks that all of them combined are over 25, you get this piece of information. And once they're over 35, you get this piece of information, right? So it scales upward as you go. And so you could bring that into a combat encounter in a way of like, there's this machine, and every round it's going to send out bolts of arcane energy and zap you in the pick a body part. We all know what you're picking already. You don't have to say it out loud. We know. But you can...
Don't you try to stop me thinking about butthole lightning.
I would never dream of making anyone stop thinking about that. Yeah, so you can make appropriate skill checks to disarm this machine so that stops, but you have to reach a certain tier. So maybe it's not enough to like make a DC 18 check. Maybe the DC is actually like 32 and it's going to take successive checks to get up that far. But it gives different goals, again, changing what the goals in the encounter are. You might have some players over here killing monsters, and then you have some players over here trying to disarm this machine as choosing who's best suited for what. Okay, so now rock my life about skill checks. Or skill challenges, rather.
You're pretty close. So a skill challenge was a type of encounter where the party needs to succeed X times before collectively failing 3 times.
Okay.
Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There were major skills, minor skills, and then sometimes there were automatic failure skills. So, like, you could have 4 major skills, let's say Arcana, History, Nature, Stealth, right? You could have minor, and those would cause successes in the skill challenge. Your minor skills would give a buff or some sort of fucking safety barrier to the major skills that you're making. Say
interesting.
You successfully make a fucking major skill and you can allow a reroll on the next, or sorry, you successfully make a minor skill check, there we go, and you can allow a reroll on the next history check that's made, or you can undo 1 failure you guys have already accrued.
So it's like a whole mini game almost. There's a...
Oh, yeah. So, like, running something like that at the same time as a combat encounter is a lot of work for the DM.
Yeah. There's
a lot of things for the DM to keep track of.
There's a lot of little ins and outs there. I'm not opposed, but yeah, that would definitely take... Like, that's not an encounter you're whipping out on the fly. You have some paperwork done before you get into that.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you specifically have to note during that encounter. Once it's if it's pulled off successfully, it'll be a super memorable and super intricate encounter where everybody has a role to play rather than just letting the barbarian fighter paladin shine and beat the fuck out of everything.
Excellent. Wow, it's these are some really great ideas.
Skill challenges are fucking fun, man.
Definitely feel the need to steal some of that and bring it to my own games now.
Absolutely. Do it. Something I have found to make encounters like that go by faster and smoother. My very lovely and talented wife, Susanna, who has commented here a few times, made these really cool cards that were just the name of a skill on the front, and some cool like art to go with it. And once the players discovered what like the major skill was, just put that card down on the fucking table, or make that word available to them somehow. So every turn, if they're struggling to think about what they should do, they have this little reminder that like that's always an option. Like, go for this.
Oh, that's rad. That's really helpful.
Yeah. Little. If you're going for intricate encounters, if you're going to make your roadside attack from 4 weasel folk and 1 fucking wagon wheel mimic a little more intricate and a little more complicated, if you're going to be throwing things like that out, as many small tricks as you can figure out to like keep your memory going, as you can put on the table, are super, super useful. Like,
especially when you're dealing with weasel folk. Like, that's a lot to deal with.
Weasel folk are slippery little fuckers, and you're already making your life difficult.
Okay,
just
so
throwing out ideas here.
let's all pick like one just like concrete example that like a new inexperienced DM could do for low level players. That's gonna change what they're doing. Like that's gonna be a different sort of encounter, right? That's gonna be an interesting encounter. That's what we're here for, right?
Okay.
So yeah, okay, cool. I'll start off with one.
Fire away.
Since I'm putting everyone on the spot, give everyone a few moments to think about it. So we go with low-level monsters. Goblins are a really popular one. And this is going back to the example of... And I talked a lot about this earlier, about the different factions of goblins. When they come upon a group of goblins, they're not just there to attack the PCs. There's actually 2 groups of goblins. And you take those... if you're balancing the encounter, you make each group balanced to fight the party. And they are fighting over a strange idol in their midst. And this idol can function, let's say, maybe as like a ring of +1 or something like that. Some kind of low-level magic item. So maybe it's something that players want too. Give a little bit of build-up that the players can watch so that they understand the situation before the encounter starts. And then when you roll initiative, make sure you roll... If you're not doing individual initiative for each monster... do it for each side of that goblin encounter, and then see what the PCs want to do about it. So that's my simple offering here of a easy to run encounter that's going to be different than the like roll, damage, repeat.
Fuck yeah. Let's go with the example of a ton of goblins on a road somewhere. Let's use the one from the beginning of what is it? Lost Mines of Phandelver? I think, where there's like the wagon that's been knocked over and like the goblins hiding in it and shit like that.
The infamous ambush.
A simple fucking ambush. You've already got the tool of like the wagon that people can hide in and move around. That's cool. But what if you take all of it and set it during an incredibly heavy, like torrential, almost hurricane-like storm in the middle of the night? Then you have to think about vision. What can people see? How much does the rain obscure things around them? You have to think about what that would make the earth into. Is the road just suddenly this river of clay that's constantly pulling at people's boots? How much support does the grass give? What is easier and not easier to move on? With the biting wind, is it strong enough to maybe push people around if they, say, fail a strength check at the end of their turn? Or like I don't know about you guys. I don't know how much time you guys have been spending walking around outside at night recently, but I have gotten a new puppy very recently, and I have to walk her pretty much every night. And walking around in the middle of the night in December with no gloves on fucking sucks. So you could think about your like fighters or your barbarians or whatever, and how numb their hands are getting and how hard it is to hold on to their tools and implements and things. Like if they get hit enough, if they deflect an attack enough or fucking whatever, are they gonna drop what they're holding because fucking weather doesn't let their fingers move anymore?
Weather, I feel, never gets enough love.
It can 100% change everything around you.
Yeah.
So as far as low-level encounters go, I always like I'm a huge fan of making encounters something that they don't quite seem like they're gonna be at first. Something that has like a twist or a surprise in it that kind of like makes it take a complete left turn. So I like just hearing you guys talk, it kind of makes me think about, say you have your group of adventurers and they're told that they're supposed to seek they're looking after some sort of item. And the person that has it is somebody, it doesn't really matter who, but they end up finding this person, and the focus of the adventure ends up being the item, which they don't necessarily get all the information for. They don't necessarily know what it is, what it does. They just know they're supposed to find it and do something with it. But say they find the group or person that has it, and as they're fighting, they're having this combat, they're trying to figure out how to get it back, but the person doesn't want to give it to them, so they try to keep it away, and the item breaks. But then they find out that the item was actually housing a ghost as the ghost comes out, and a single ghost against a low-level party is...
That's brutal.
Scary.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't necessarily have to end in a horrible death, because ghosts have cool abilities where they don't necessarily just have to kill their enemies.
Oh, possession? Ooh, exactly. Possession's so good.
So then it becomes, now they use a ghost to possess maybe the enemy, maybe one of the party members. Now it's, do we kill the person because they're not in their own rights, or do we try and figure out what to do with this spirit? Oh no, it's still trying to kill us, so what are we doing, kind of deal.
That's good. Yeah. I like that. Oh man, I might rip that off verbatim. I really like that. I'm not even going to give you credit. I'm just going to have him roll initiative and tell him I thought
of it. Fucking... Go ahead, fire away.
Oh, no, by all means.
Oh, the one fucking goblin that your archer pegged in the fucking eye with an arrow was holding the idol of butthole lightning, and it broke and shattered and let out the butthole lightning ghost, and now that's
there you go.
Yeah.
So
swole ass Mandolf and the butthole lightning ghost. That's a
our
love story stronger than Twilight right there.
And that's the name of our new adventure coming out in fall of 2022.
We need over a year to develop this.
There's going to be a lot of playtesting, and you think you want to know what the playtesting is going to involve, and you might. But yeah,
At least one of us will regret it.
At least.
Max, Dix, this has been a lot of fun. This has been great.
Hell yeah, dude. This has been fantastic.
Indeed. I hope you all have some great ideas out there about how to spice up your encounters now. Gentlemen, what do you want to tell people about, and where can they find you?
Hey everybody. Thanks for joining us here today.
Your favorite part.
And you want me to, I can get closer. You're gonna edit the sound for this anyway when we do the recorded thing, so you brought this on yourself. Hey everybody, come check out Help Action, and if this isn't a glowing endorsement of our podcast, well, fuck you, we didn't want you there anyway. Come listen to Help Action. We are a Dungeons and Dragons advice podcast that is as helpful as we can be. We release episodes every other fucking Friday. You can find us at Dix. You're so much better at our contact than I am. We've been doing it for over a year now, and I still get it wrong.
So you can find us at Help Action Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Help Action Pod on Twitter. You can email us at helpactionpodcast@gmail.com, and you can check out our website at help-action.com.
And in theory, some of these things at least our Facebook information should be tagged in this post, in theory. And I will say that, admittedly, I slept on Help Action Podcast for a little bit, and I fucked that up. Once I started listening, I was like, every 2 weeks, I was like, oh, it's this time again. All right, yeah, I guess I don't love myself any more than I did 2 weeks ago. Let's go. Let's do this. But sincerely, it's always a great time to listen to.
Thanks,
and
man.
you all do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on that note, if you need someone to run some Ethan in the comments is also part of said podcast, and
It's true, he is.
I miss him.
Yeah.
If you need someone to run some interesting encounters for your games, Crumbling Keep does have some excellent pro DMs. Dix is one of them, and you can check that out at Crumbling or ProfessionalDungeonMasters.com. Yeah, that's probably the best place to find that. ProfessionalDungeonMasters.com.
I guess I have something to say about Professional Dungeon Masters too.
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah, I've been a pro DM in Portland for just about 10 years now, and I have yet to meet another pro DM in Portland that's been doing it as long as I have. You can find me at Dungeon Master Max on pretty much all social media outlets. Is it all? Yeah, it's also Dungeon Master Max on Facebook. Fucking hit them up and hit me up and fucking get some goddamn dice rolling, because I know people need entertainment right now.
And I will definitely say, when I met Max, I was working at a game store and he was running games there, and so I just had the joy of listening to his games, and like every good DM I've had, I'm thankful for, because they all have different abilities that shine. I don't know, and watching this, I'm sure you can all relate. Max is a excellent showman. It's just you're never detached from the action. You're just always brought right to it.
You guys put up with me running and screaming in the fucking store so much.
You know, it alarmed me at first, but 3 weeks in, I'm like, oh, it's just Max again. And eventually, I got to be the person explaining that to new employees. I was like, oh, it's just Max.
Yes.
But yes, if you're looking for a professional DM, Max is fantastic. Yep. Well, excellent. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And the replay should be up in a little bit once I hit this little stop button. So if you're curious what you missed, you can rewatch. And we'll have to do this again someday, guys.
Definitely.
Goodbye.